Hey, go ahead, John.
Good morning, Mr. Una. It is June 28th at our Economic Development, Historic Preservation, and Environmental Conservation Committee. Boy, that's a long one. And if we have attendance, we can get going.
We have our new chairman of the, well, potentially nominated for new chairman of the planning board, David DiRapino, Bill. Oh my gosh. So just for the record, no, okay. And Elena and Matt and John and Rita is online today. Sorry, I'm on some cold medicine this morning.
Very good, thank you. And again, I want to welcome Mr. DiRapino, who has served the town admirably, and I'm sure will continue to do so. Definitely stepped up at a needed time. So thank you for the planning board work and most likely the future chair. That's excellent. And that brings us to the minutes, which we will do at the August meeting, and resolutions.
So I just have a couple quick resolutions for the next town board meeting. We were approved by NYSERDA to launch an electric vehicle campaign in the town of Niskayuna for the Clean Energy Communities Program. We talked about this a little bit at the last month. We are going to do an EV vehicle fair on July 20th here at town board at the town hall. And I just think that recognizing the launch of the campaign by a resolution would be a good idea. We are going to do probably a nighttime meeting too, possibly some flyers, and just get the information out there for people on why EVs are, especially in New York, very good for reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
Very good, excellent.
B is a resolution appointing members to the planning board. Clark asked me about this. So right now, Cindy Gomes is an alternate. My recommendation would be that she moves to a regular member. We left Kevin, and we already had an alternate vacancy. David's moving up as chair potentially. So that means that we're going to have 2 vacant positions at the planning board.
Or alternates.
As long as we move Miss Gomes up to alternates.
So we'll have 2 or 1 if
So
we
right
can
now,
move this.
an alternate vacancy. We have Ms. Gomes as an alternate. There's 2
Okay,
positions.
Yeah.
Ms. Gomes is historically, we usually move the alternates up into a full-time, or not full-time, but full regular board member. So if we did that, then that would leave 2 vacant positions for alternates.
We gotta find some more. That's more people for them.
One thing I was thinking, we're still working on the policy stuff for finding other people, but we have some really good people on the CC. We have some really good people on Complete Streets. I mean, I could put some feelers out and see if we wanted to shift some people around so that we could fill the holes in the planning board quickly and then work on the vacancies for the other boards, but I don't want to step on anybody's toes. Right.
It's about the communication, sending out resumes, and just letting everybody know kind of what the thoughts are on who's gonna move where.
Yeah, I mean, Joe's trying to schedule our next policy committee meeting, but I mean, we're already talking about the end of July. Like having 2 vacancies at the planning board is kind of.
I'm jumping ahead to the end of the agenda, but obviously it looks like there's several vacancies on several different boards. So would it make sense to put something out on the town's website requesting resumes for all, like these are the vacancies we have, but we've done it in the past, something similar. But in the meantime, we can also put out feelers with the boards to see if anybody's interested in moving to an alternate planning board.
Yeah, or we could even actually don't know this was necessarily addressed in our policy, policy on appointments, but we could even just tell people on the other board if they were interested to resend their resumes too. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's kind of what I was suggesting. Yeah. So it'd still be handled the same way that we would, but while we're simultaneously seeking resumes from people who aren't currently involved with the town, we can also seek the resumes from anybody that might want to make a shift and then still follow through the way we
Yeah, we could just like forward the email to the residents, to the board people and say, if you're interested, send your resume or something like that.
Does the new policy, apply to alternates going to regulars?
Specifically, I don't think, just that the board, the town board is made aware of what's happening. So that Laura would say, okay, this is what I'm doing. I have this alternate. We bring them on. As not an alternate, but a regular
Yes.
member.
Yeah, the planning board alternates have to come to every planning board meeting. So they pretty much always move forward into the regular position because they have that consistency. And then we go.
So with a couple missing on the planning board, if a couple don't show up, it's possible you can't have that meeting.
Well,
Right.
you can still have a meeting, but it's just a matter of when you need enough seats for quorum.
For
The
quorum.
alternates can't be a project lead either, so
Mhm.
that's the other thing too. So when we're down, they could work under a project lead on a project if they choose to, which they've done in the past, but not having that flexibility of two
Mhm.
people there. Sometimes if you're out three, then that's
Yeah.
the limit.
So you couldn't actually resolve anything. You couldn't vote
If
in
you
that
don't-
situation.
You gotta have quorums.
All right. Well, if anybody is listening, as always, we do need town leaders and town volunteers, so please send them in and hopefully we can get involved. All right.
Okay, so my third resolution, which doesn't have to come from this committee, can really come from anywhere, but I work with the videographers the most because they come to so many of my meetings. And the current videographer, Jad, is moving to North Carolina because that's where he's going to college. So he talked to a couple people that he knows at school, and he had two people that he was recommending to me. I only got a resume from one, his younger brother actually, but his name's Zayad, and I will take any videographer that I can get. It's a really important job, and I'm excited about this particular individual if we're able to. So I have his resume, I can give it to Beth. Sometimes the videographer comes from me and sometimes it comes directly from the supervisor. So I just got the resume. I wanted to make sure I didn't forget, so I put it on our agenda. But we do have at least one candidate for a videographer, which because Jad's leaving in early August, we'd want to get them on the end of July so that he can train them up and then we'll be seamless for videoing at the planning board. And I know Jad had started to take over doing the town board. That's up to the town board, but I mean, I certainly think it's completely fine once they're trained. So,
And what are the videographer's duties?
they come a half an hour before the nighttime meetings start, and they operate all the equipment and make sure the live stream's working, and then clean the room up at the end of the meetings.
They don't have to attend any of the committee meetings and all that, right? That's all.
Generally speaking, they're during school, and the videographers are always high schooler.
All right, very good.
For discussions, we've been working on the short-term rental code for the planning board. The Milton Keynes people come regularly to our board meeting. I believe that possibly at this July 8th meeting, we'll have a code that we're ready to call a public hearing on, I'm hoping. I really think we're getting there. Interestingly, New York State just possibly passed a law on registering short-term rentals, but it doesn't affect what we're doing.
So did we work on an existing code from some other municipality and we put in what things that we want in this and trying to get it to the finish line?
Yeah, we used North Elba and we looked at a variety of other towns' codes, but the Capital Region Planning Commission recommends using North Elba because it's been litigated and withstood. So we started there. They are a seasonal community and we are a bedroom community, so we had to change a reasonable amount of that because they're essentially allowed to get a little bit more than we would allow it. But I feel like we've landed, not everybody's in agreement, but we've landed on really allowing hosted rentals in most residential zones, but unhosted rentals. So like that's the situation where someone's buying a house just to rent it as a short-term rental forever, you know, really, really limit those
Right, I did read
almost-
that.
almost out of existence.
So that's the main-
What you sent out.
Yeah,
That's the main component of it.
right, is that distinguishment. So, and the hosted ones, they have some requirements. I mean, the hosted ones, it has to be your primary residence. You couldn't have 3 houses and own them all. And, you know,
Yeah,
like
the
this one
same,
has
yeah.
to be your primary residence and you have to be there while it's being rented. So the idea on that is that, you know, when you get complaints of parties and stuff, like if it's your primary home and you're there when you're renting it, it's very unlikely that you're gonna have, you know, 18-person parties that are super loud in your own house.
We hope.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty unlikely.
And then from an enforcement standpoint, I mean, the primary resident doesn't always have to be at home, but what, you show up so many times and if they're not home, then it's a violation?
No, I mean, I actually think if you look at the code, they only are allowed one kind of mix up before they get their license revoked. Yeah, just one.
All right, very good.
We gotta get this going quickly.
Yes.
But we're also, I mean, I can say from the legal standpoint, all 3 attorneys that are hired through the town are working on this in some way, shape or form. Rob's been doing a lot of the planning board meetings. That was at the last one. There's a lot of questions that are being asked. And it's been litigated a little bit, but it's, you know, there's still a lot of litigation, I think, to be had over it. So,
And it may continue that way.
I'm sure, absolutely sure that it will, but, you know, we're trying to, I've had Chuck doing some research because, Ms. Strang had asked about specific cases, and unfortunately I, you know, review stuff, but I don't necessarily save it all. So I've had Chuck kind of compiling that. I know he's been in communication with the Association of Towns, and Rob and I have been in communication since he usually attends the planning boards and they have questions. And so we're all kind of working together to get the legal questions asked as far as what we can and can't do.
We're gonna do the best that we can, and we may get litigated, you know, somebody may sue us over it, but
But we want to try to have a code that we don't hopefully end up getting sued over, because like, you know, using North Elwood, they've already litigated that. So if there's certain components that we're using that they've already used, we shouldn't be litigated over that because it's already been litigated.
Yeah.
If we do something new that nobody's done before, then, you know, that's a little bit of a different issue. Like, for instance, one of the questions has been, can we just outright ban them? And we believe that you can't just outright ban them. But we certainly can restrict it with the hosted versus unhosted. New York City did that, for instance.
And North Elwood did that too.
And New York City has also been litigated. So, you know, we're just trying to keep our eye on everything. And like Laura said, I mean, even since the last planning board meeting was the articles about New York State and what New York State's doing.
which may change.
And that's what I'm saying. It's constantly changing, but I think everybody's working hard to try to come to something that
Yeah,
works for our community and hopefully doesn't.
So realistically, do you think we can get this on for the August town board meeting?
It depends on how the next meeting
mhm.
goes. So we're trying to move in that direction of doing the hosted and non-hosted. The example of Milton Keys is that you're going to have these outliers that are homes that are problematic. But the enforcement issue is the other thing that we talked extensively about at the last meeting too. And we know that that's difficult for the town to do after hours, but there's a mechanism in place with whatever gets adopted so that it can be enforced. So when you get these outlier properties, over time between just complaints on their websites, complaints from, you know, users or whatever it is, or who's ever hosting it, they add up. They could lose internally their ability to rent, which is one thing. And then after the town gets its enforcement policy in place and actually implements it, then you can restrict that house from being rented. So that's the ultimate long-term goal, I think, to deal with some of the outliers. Then it's a matter of who's going to actually take advantage of this in the town. And then we can start tracking stuff through registration. So it varies. Like sometimes there's 3 rentals on, and sometimes there's like up to 11 or 12.
Mhm.
We don't know if that is because it's proximity to the track.
Mhm.
Is it near the casino? Is it just because Union had a graduation?
Mhm.
You know,
Just because it's on Airbnb or VRBO or whatever the website might be, doesn't necessarily mean it's a short-term rental. A lot of people use those websites for long-term rentals too, like if you're a traveling nurse or something and need something for like 3 months, like for the summer or something
Right.
like that, they do that. So that would be the only thing that I would note, like just because we see them on a web or on one of these web pages available, doesn't necessarily make it a short-term rental. It could be a long.
How are we defining short-term rental?
Less than 30 days. right?
Less than
Less than 30?
Okay, let's talk about enforcement. What are we doing? What is the plan for enforcement?
What have these other municipalities done?
So anything that you study says that enforcement, it's a lot. I don't think it'll be as much in Muskegon, as like, North Alba and places because we just have less. But, we do have to be aware that it's going to be more work with building inspectors. And a typical enforcement is, off hours. So we can see how it goes. I mean, my building inspectors, they have off-hour inspections now. If a car hits a commercial building or there's a fire, so they have a process for being called out off hours. It is always overtime, but I mean, we can watch our budget, and if it bumps up the overtime a little, I think that's probably okay. I mean, it's kind of you guys' call, but it's probably okay.
So let me just sort of give this scenario. We're getting a call from Milton Keyton residents that that property, after we hopefully get this done, is then being rented out for a party, and there's 25 cars in the street, and there's now. Tell me what's gonna happen. Then we're gonna get a building inspector to go there,
So that, couple things. I
Police,
mean,
or are we gonna get a police officer?
well, so the code that we're adopting now, it requires, and I've said this, it's going to be difficult. But I mean, if we don't have a code in place now, so if we get that call now, it's not illegal to have 12 cars on the road and,
Right.
noise is really hard to enforce. But if you get that call with this code in place, either the police can do a report and then give it to the building inspectors in the morning to act on, or the police can call the building inspectors out and the building inspectors can verify themselves. This code requires all the cars to be parked off street. So, I mean, is it going to be easy for them to necessarily identify all of the cars that are parked on the street and who they belong to? Like, that could be hard, but generally speaking, if they knock on the door and it's pretty clear that there's a big party there and the cars are overflowing onto the street, I mean, I think, they can knock on the one door and be like, whose car is where, so, and then that's already a violation, so.
So then would you get a ticket to go to the town court?
No,
Uh,
so you get one violation.
Mhm.
And then you have to address it immediately. And if you get a second one, then you're licensed to be able, because this is built on registering your short-term rental with the town of Niskuna. So it's built on you submit all your paperwork, you show us where all your parking spots are, you have to notify and post all of the rules and regulations in your home. You have all of this heavy kind of lifting at the front to get yourself registered to be an Airbnb. Hi, Beth. And then hopefully,
I didn't know it was changed because I was out yesterday.
Is that right?
No, it's okay. Sorry
We
about
don't
that.
have
I
to get too
apologize.
much into the
Yeah,
weeds.
so
I
anyway,
just wanted
so
to
it's all
kind of
based
give
on that registration. And if you get that registration removed, then you've got and then you've clearly got a short-term rental happening in your house.
So I guess my
then
own
you can
question,
get it taken.
okay, so the removal process does involve the town court. Eventually, if they're gonna be removed off the short-term rental list, that's done through an appearance ticket at the town court.
No, it would be if you got your license removed, but you continue to operate a short-term rental. Then you get the notice and order, and if you do not listen, you'd end up in court.
So then the town itself makes the decision to remove the license based on the prior violation.
Yeah, building inspector.
And then they continue, it would go into town court.
If they, of course, I mean, it's kind of similar to all our other zoning code processes, but if they feel that the building inspector has erred in his interpretation of them having a short-term rental or whatever, the appeals board, we changed to the zoning board of appeals because we are not going to have a separate appeals board. The town of North Alba has a separate short-term rental appeals board.
They have a lot of rentals in that area.
Yeah.
compared to us.
So
it
we
makes
just changed
sense
ours to the zoning board. So if you have a concern with the way that it's being enforced, the zoning board is first. You know,
What's to be some type of due process?
Yes, what's the attraction in North Alba that?
That's like fun area.
Like,
yeah. And you know, what they're up against is, you know, say you have 10 houses on a cul-de-sac, like 8 of them at this point are sometimes being rentals, so they're losing the fabric of their community. Where ours are more, it's rare to have them, and so when you have one in the neighborhood, it's like a striking contrast to the rest of the homes.
It's very
Yeah.
noticeable.
Mhm.
Well, do the best you can, because, you know, for our residents, this is a big deal.
oh yeah, we're,
You know that, and everybody knows that, so we're
Yeah,
gonna try to go as quickly as possible, but.
this has been pretty quick.
It is, it has
This has
been,
been, I mean, for a municipality, this has been really, really quick. So I commend everybody involved, and it sounds like it's very thorough as well.
And coming with every planning board, they've been good to work with.
I will note that they said at the last planning board meeting that they want to make sure that it's done right and not rushed. And it's something that we can't either enforce or that's really just meaningless. So
something that has.
they have acknowledged that that's an important component.
And I've been sending them drafts for them to look over and think about. They do sometimes call me with questions. If we don't agree, which is completely fine, I always submit all, you know, what their concerns are to the planning board to sort through. Although I think most of us are on the same page here. I think the one concern is that there's still gonna be problems with hosted rentals, but I think once you adopt that code, that'll give us, you know, teeth enforcement for those ones too, so.
All right, good.
Very
Not much
good.
Different than somebody who rents out one permit.
Yeah.
There's,
You've had those situations too.
Yeah, just to be clear though, if it's like a big party, like, you know, sometimes people have big parties at their houses that get out of control. Whether it's a short-term rental or a regular old home, like that's probably gonna be a police call.
Yeah.
Just don't break up fights.
Graduation party, big whatever kind of party, and then door.
Yeah,
Down in the
exactly.
music,
Turn
and,
on
you know, if some of the cars, so people can get by.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
All right, so that brings us to the committee for appointments.
Yeah, so we did, I talked about this before, we pulled it for adoption because one of the things we realized with Kevin leaving is that we don't really have a good, policy in the policy for, chairman. So, Joe wrote some draft language that we can look at our next meeting, which is gonna be sometime in mid to end of July. And then, we'll bring that back to the town board. David had a really good idea, which I mentioned to everyone, even at the town board level, that we may do some kind of a vice chairman thing so that we're not kind of floundering when we lose our chairman. I think everybody liked the idea. I'm pretty sure that Joe wrote it into the updates, which I have to go look at. But that would be helpful because it puts that person on notice that they need to be basically this close to the same amount of prepared as David in case David can't make it, so. And then I know we've had some discussion about the Climate Smart Communities grant, sidewalks grant. It sounded like the supervisor wanted to hold off on it for now.
So I had written the email to you both that we had budgeted the 300,000 in the active budget for this year. What I would recommend is we take that money because we didn't get the grant this year, put that into a capital project. So we've already got that put aside for next year.
Mhm.
And then if the board wants to budget additional money, so you can push that grant, you know, wherever everybody thinks that's appropriate, we can do that. It's just that when we had budgeted it the previous year, we had still had capital projects money for sidewalks that we have since used for the other projects we've done.
Mhm.
So I think that's a good way ahead is if we take what we've budgeted and not used and set it aside and then build off of that, I think it'll give you some flexibility.
Okay, another thing we could do is that the grant minimum is like, it says 50,000, it's actually more like 62,000. Is that we could just target, there's 3 sidewalks in that grant application, one on Palmer, one on Birchwood, and one on Cornelius.
Yeah, I saw your list.
Yeah, so I mean, we could, like, Birchwood, for instance, is $600,000 on its own.
Right,
We could just,
do that
then
one.
we only need the 300,000.
Right, and I think that's
we
a
already
good option
have.
too.
You know, so then we're not even asking for future money.
Right,
The thing is, we paid the grant consultant to write this grant last year.
right.
And it wasn't even reviewed because they didn't submit the calculations for the greenhouse gas emissions, so it didn't pass the threshold to even get there. So like, to me, we might as well resubmit the work that we did because we paid for it and then see where we land. But I mean, if we're worried about, I know you did your budget presentation in this year, next year, like really tight. So if we're worried, we could scale it back and use the work that we did last year too.
Right, and it's, we're, in terms of flexibility, I already had started the initial 2025 budget, just kind of make everything balanced. And I didn't change those two lines.
Yeah, so that
So
way
I had already
maybe-
preliminarily budgeted enough for this match, if the board is willing to support, you know, those two lines being that high again. And if we move these capital projects over. So again, that's, you know, however the board wants to handle it, I think we can make it work. It's just, there's a certain amount of juggling with the funds to balance.
Well, I
that
think we need
match.
prior notification and planning on, we don't want to get into a situation, and we sort of had some of that in the past where we apply for these, and then if we get them, now it sort of forces the board's hand as far as finding that match money, where you said budgeting for it
Right.
ahead of time, it's easier.
Right.
Can we slide Consol Road in there?
Another option would be, that, you know, you don't go for the climate smart grant and you have $300,000 budgeted for sidewalks this year and you do something like a console road project. The advantage to the grant is that it's a 50-50 grant, so every dollar you spend on sidewalks, you're getting another dollar. If you decide you don't want to go for that grant, and you just want to spend the sidewalk money, you're still going to build a sidewalk. It's just,
You won't get as much
you
time.
won't miss it.
Maybe we need to prioritize these projects also. Right?
Yeah, we have them.
We kind of do,
Yeah.
and for some reason Consol just keeps sliding down. I think that's more with the difficulty of the project than anything else.
Conceptual.
Okay.
Yeah, the meeting or two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. You know, we did talk about this grant at the Economic Development Committee meeting last month prior to it going on the town board. I think maybe we just didn't fully flesh out the match.
The money,
I mean, it was mentioned. I
Yeah,
made
no, it
sure.
was
I went back
definitely
in the
mentioned. I just didn't
meeting. It
realize
wasn't
that the
like we're
match
in the
was
Wild West,
that
like we
high.
brought it up. Everything was out there.
I agree.
Once you put it on paper though, then sometimes you have to double check things.
Yeah. What I'm hearing right now is we have essentially two options. One is to take the 300,000 that we currently have budgeted, put it into capital project. Wait and hold it off till next year, budget another 300,000 next year, and then apply for the grant next year.
No, it's
No,
this
we
year
would,
for
we would
next
still
year.
apply for the grant now, as long as the board's willing to say, because we'd have to fund those for next year, which we don't typically approve the budget until, you know, early November. So we technically we have 300,000 right now, like, that I could set aside. But I don't have more than that until the budget's approved by the board, unless they want to approve the use of fund balance.
Yes, you anticipate getting the grant.
Correct. Exactly.
But the other option, as Laura said, is to just file the grant based on the 300,000 that we have now. So then we'd end up with, that we get the grant would be 600,000.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Is that
the
right?
board has
Yeah,
to
you can do
decide
that too.
what essentially, which way you guys want to go.
Or
I
we
mean,
could
it
not
could
do the
be-
grant at all and work on
Right,
it.
right. But I think that's the discussion that has to be had is which.
Yeah.
Just
So
so
Laura,
everybody
that's the direction.
understands, this is the 2024 Climate Smart Communities Grant for sidewalks. We submitted in 2023 for the Climate Smart Community Grant for sidewalks. When we submitted in 2023, the grant really doesn't get awarded for 2024. We had $0 in the budget when we submitted for 2023. We just knew when we made that commitment that we were going to budget in 2024 for it. So Beth and I sat down and figured out where that money was. You don't have to have it to submit the grant.
Right.
We didn't have it last year when we submitted it. We knew that if we got awarded it, we had to, so we budgeted it into 2024, then we didn't get awarded it. So like, to me, I'm like, well, let's resubmit in 2024 with the calculations that we know that we need, and then use the money that we had already budgeted. It's just that somewhere along the line, we spent some of our, because we didn't get the grant.
Right, right.
So somewhere along the
Right,
line,
right,
we spent some of it.
right.
But I mean, I think it's okay not to have the 600,000 right now. Like last year, we had $0 of the
But we knew we were putting it in the.
Right,
budget. We
yeah.
Had that
As
discussion.
long as you're
We can do the same
anticipating.
thing. Exactly. We can do
we
the
want
same.
to have more anticipation. We don't want to
Yeah.
get in a situation where,
Yeah.
oh, we got it all of a sudden, now we have to go find the
Correct.
money. That's a little harder than.
Exactly.
Budget.
That we did last year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's, I mean, and you know, I think any dollar we can spend on sidewalk you know, is, I think, good for the world. So however you guys want to tackle that, I feel like we're in a good situation. We have $300,000 this year.
Yeah.
We could spend it ourselves. We could do a lesser grant for next year. Or we could try and get the whole ball of wax again.
It would be nice to get the whole ball of wax, because then we could solve all three of these, right? If not four.
But do we have a separate budget line for the maintenance of sidewalks?
We have a section. Yeah, we have a
Yeah,
whole
well,
section.
every sidewalk we build
Well, I'm
Good
just,
point.
there's
comes with.
maintenance stuff too, so I just wanna make sure we're not
Maintaining costs.
spending all of the money.
No,
on that
yeah,
building
no,
and
it's not-
maintaining.
there's a whole segment of sidewalks that, yeah, and this is only two lines that we were using out of that. We were using our capital line out of that, and we were using our ADA compliance line. So, and that's very appropriate for this, so.
We need to be spending the ADA
Yeah.
money on sidewalks, like per federal mandate. So there, you know, honestly, it would be good to still do a little bit of ADA this year so that we're showing
Yeah, I mean,
everyone good faith
But
and then,
ADA, again, could be maintenance, right?
no,
No, it's
no.
Not.
No, it's actually making sure that your current sidewalks actually are to meet ADA compliance.
That's what I mean, our current sidewalk.
Yeah, so, yeah,
You could construe it as maintenance. If
Yeah.
you got a walk that's got a curb and say,
You
oh,
have
this
to
needs
redo that,
ADA,
yeah.
you need to redo that.
Yeah,
That's-
okay, yeah, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, for our current
Yeah,
sidewalks.
it can also be used for that, yes.
yes, yeah, like refinishing them if they're spalding and stuff like that. That can all be ADA.
Had some things come up with that, so that's why. I'm
Yeah.
bringing that
Oh,
up.
okay. Yeah.
I wanna make sure that.
So let's get a list of that. We have a
Should
list on
probably-
that.
That, you guys,
Yes.
the reason that we can use the ADA money is that these sidewalks typically touch other sidewalks. So when they touch the other sidewalks, we redo all of those curb ramps and stuff like that and make them ADA.
Very good. And that brings us to the planning board recap.
Okay, so just, we obviously did not have our town board meeting last night. The resolution for this was on the town board meeting last night. I think it was intended to be pulled. So maybe you guys could just have an internal discussion on how you want that resolution to go forward, on the rescheduled town board meeting.
Which is gonna be
Sidewalks.
when?
We don't know, we're gonna find out today.
Okay,
We gotta
all right,
figure out what works for them.
Is that,
all right.
Yeah.
That will work.
okay, I mean, even if we just need to. have
And one
another
thing I would
internal meeting
recommend
about
is
that.
whatever we do, is that we'll update the budget resolutions for July, because we don't have time for this one.
Oh, to move that
To move that
into,
into
so
a
that we
capital,
don't
so
have
we've at
to
least
spend
got
it.
that
Yeah.
much set aside. So that way we kind of box that in, so we know we've got that.
And the two alternatives are, if we don't go for the whole ball of wax, we have the money set aside. If we get the grant to budget it to go forward. If we do get the whole ball of wax, then we would have to set aside another, yes. And in doing that, what kind of hardship would that present on our finances?
It's just a really tight budget year. That's why I've already done an initial crack at the budget, and we still have to use a chunk of fund balance to stay under the tax cap.
We don't have.
Yeah, so I mean,
It's
given
very
that
tight this
circumstance,
year.
then maybe it makes sense to do the $600,000 grant this time.
Yeah.
Use the money that we budgeted. We didn't get the grant. We did spend the money to do the grant submittal, so maybe we do as much as we can to maximize that. And then we pick, so essentially we pick one. It's either Birchwood in its entirety or Cornelius and Palmer together, which help children walk to Hillside and Van Antwerp Middle School,
Mhm.
or obviously Birchwood is for Birchwood Elementary School. Not that we're picking schools. That's just the connections there that we made.
Sure. All right,
Okay, so obviously Kevin is, his last day will be, June 30th or 30th? 30th, yeah. And David, normally Kevin goes through the planning board agenda. This came super fast, so I don't expect you to do that. But just really quickly, Market 32 is open, got their final CO. We're really good to work with, put in the extra side, well, it's not extra, but put in the missing sidewalk.
And put the stairs in
yeah,
there.
the stairs,
Are we putting a crosswalk there?
they are,
They're striping the road?
yeah, we talked to Ray about that. Yeah.
Okay.
I noticed the stairs didn't have a railing. Is there gonna be one added?
Oh, I can ask them about that.
Where's this?
That's a code requirement or not.
Where's
Right up here, we're at the Market 32, they put a set of stairs in kind of off the parking lot that then marries up to the sidewalk across the street.
Supposed to have been, built for, St. James.
Well,
That's why all the
Little
sidewalks
late
are
getting
there.
it done, huh?
I know, Market 32 stepped up, so yay. But I mean, that's one of the advantages of bringing them to the planning board, because we can look at the site plans and say, hey, this was missed. Like, you're gonna do tenant change, we know it's grocery store to grocery store, but you gotta get the site up to sell.
That's like the match point, we should look at.
I just noticed it.
Yeah.
Trying to find-
Yeah, they probably are just waiting for the concrete to cure a little bit. I'm sure code requires. a
Oh,
railing.
really?
I would think so
You would
too.
think
If there
Yeah.
isn't one, we'll make the recommendation that they should add one.
anything over 2 stairs? Like, you have to
Yeah.
have.
They're probably, I'll call them, but they're probably proposing to add. Everything they've done over there has been really good. TD Bank has been working with us on facade changes and signs. Capital Kids Care is opening up a second, daycare at the Niskuna Reformed Church. It's not like a net increase, though. The old daycare that was operating at the Niskuna Reformed Church is leaving and Capital Kids Care is taking over. Because I know people really need daycare. The medical office signages are still working their way through the boards. The proposal for the medical office signage on Balltown Road was denied by the zoning board, but the proposal for the medical signage at 1769 Union Street, the Albany Med Building, they changed it significantly, so it's going back to the planning board in July, and then it'll be back to the zoning board.
More signage on the Albany Med Building?
More. I
There's a
mean,
ton of signage. How do you miss it?
agreed, and there were residents that came to ask for no more signage, but the proposal was so different from what the planning board had recommended. I mean, they changed the location, they changed the sign, they changed like everything. So they get one more chance to go through the boards. See what happens. Taco Bell is moving out of it's not Mohawk. Yeah, Mohawk Commons. Taco Bell is moving out of Mohawk Commons, and Community Bank is moving in potentially. GE Vernova, the planning board has been working with them on their new direct air capture building, which is a pretty cool technology for taking carbon out of the air. They're coming back to the planning board on July 8th because they want to move their location, but it's a pretty mild move, so that should be pretty painless.
Good.
Obviously recognizing Kevin Walsh. Kevin is having a couple emergency issues with his family, so if we reschedule the town board meeting for this next week, I am requesting that we pull the resolution for him. He won't be able to be here. Both he and I think that he'll be back for July 8th. And so if we were to move the town board meeting to the agenda meeting, then we could keep the resolution on, but obviously,
I'd like to have him here.
yeah, I don't want to do the town board resolution without him there, so he's just, he's flying down to be with his family. So he's not gonna be here for the next week, so however we're doing that rescheduling, I think it needs to be for him, either pull his resolution from the town board meeting until, July, unless it gets scheduled later in July. And Upstate Guns and Ammo, David has been working with, Mr. Serafini on that. I think he will be coming back for a full edition, to try and keep that property looking more in harmony with the,
That's been on our agenda
I know.
for 6 years.
6 years. Zoning board.
It's going, it's just,
Continuous.
it's unbelievable.
That's 12 years.
Yeah, it just can't seem to get it all together or something.
He had an open question, I think. Oh, he can't. Did we let him know that? Oh, okay.
I thought we were still doing a notice in order. I did not know
Yes.
that we were on our end of things.
We did do a notice of order. He had that to go to court. I think the question he had is if he moves everything to a
So from my standpoint, we should be slowing down anything on our end because he's trying to come up with unique ways to get out of it.
Yeah,
Our position has been what our position has been, and we've made him aware of that.
yeah,
He can
and
ask as many questions as he wants, but we should still be looking for it on our end.
yeah, we're ready. We've actually even told him that.
Somebody's got to draft the corporate work.
Draft the court papers.
Right, Jeff come to be the planner when he kind of started with that property, right? Remember?
Yeah.
He was selling cars there also.
He does still sell.
Because that's when I was on zoning and, you know, we were very worried about that property.
Gee, was it that
What-
long?
Yeah, and what they were gonna do with it.
Yeah. Well,
Why
I
that
mean,
big-
when I first came here, we did not, he had his state license to sell guns, but he had never gone through the planning process to sell guns. And so we didn't even realize that the car sales place was also selling firearms. And so then we had to catch up to that. That's when he went to the zoning board and I think the town board, it's 2 uses on a single property. And then,
But the current issue is different.
yeah, that
That's
all
to
got
do with the
approved,
pod.
yes.
He's been out there.
Had a pot on there for multiple years now, which isn't allowed under our code.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Clark may have done a little bit of update of the request to open up a juice bar on Union Street. It is a non-conforming building. It's kind of like Harry's automotive on Route 7. It's very restrictive when it's a non-conforming building. There isn't enough existing parking, so changing of the use triggers quite a bit of additional requirements, which we've been working on them with and co-working with the city of Schenectady on this because it's a shared building. David was able to go to a meeting while I was super sick, and I'm very appreciative of you being there. And
Didn't
then
we address the issue of the use set forth in the city's site plan application is different than the use set forth in the town of Mosquito site plan? Do we know, you know what I mean? Like when I saw the site plan application for city of Schenectady, it still said event center, right?
So I have to relook at that paperwork. My understanding just from watching that meeting is that their first application to the city of Schenectady was event center and then they modified it to the juice
Okay.
bar. So I don't know if
So
maybe
we
the
need to
paperwork
modify
never got updated, but verbally they said that it was modified by
In the
the
cities,
in the city of Schenectady.
and the city has said that as well?
I think they did say that, didn't they?
I didn't get a definitive
Answer on that
answer
one?
from her yet.
What building is this? What's the address?
Where
So
the old, tattoo, what's the pizza place
Primo,
in there?
Primo.
Pizza Bono.
Oh, Pizza
Oh,
Bono.
yeah,
Oh,
Pizza
yeah, sorry.
Bono, and there's a nail salon, I think, in there. Is that
Mhm.
still in there?
On
Right.
Antwerp and-
Dan Antwerp, yes,
right there?
yes, but it's the frontage is on Union where the old
Yeah.
tattoo place used to be.
the configuration of the floor plan is the full storefront. And then it goes back in almost like an L. So there's a big seating area in the front. All of his stuff is in the back. So for takeout only, it's a large
Sitting here.
sitting area. And it's been used recently, up until not too long ago, to host events. It's been shut down.
Oh, geez, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Huh.
So and there's, I guess, an apartment upstairs.
Yeah.
What kind of events?
Oh, I don't know, like parties.
Just in the-
Correct.
There's not a lot of parking there.
That's the.
No, there's 12
No.
spaces
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were alerted
and
to
no
the
street parking.
problem because the police were getting so many calls of people under the influence leaving the premises.
Right.
So,
And it's the same tenant that's putting forth now the juice bar. But when I saw the paperwork from the city site plan, my concern was that they were trying to pull one over on all of us and have a different application here that they thought that Niskuna would approve of versus the city not knowing that we were going to at some point.
yeah,
I'll
I
get
heard
in
this.
the same room.
Yeah, and I'll follow up with the city on that. I did know that the city definitely said at the beginning that the original application was for an event center, which they approved subject to their legal department's certificate of, can't remember exactly what they called it, but they can't get that from their legal department without approval from the town of Niskuna. And the town of Niskuna is the jurisdiction for the majority of that building, and we have notes in our files going back all the way to the sixties and seventies on how we have handled the tenant in that particular spot. And we have memos from former attorneys and everything, and so we're just trying to be consistent. The majority of that building is in the town of Niskuna. All of that parking is in the town of Niskuna, and we have very clear precedents and understanding that if it's retail, it's allowed to go from retail to retail, but if it changes to restaurant, changes to event center, you're changing the parking demand, there isn't enough parking there, and that's when it really gets tricky, because you're essentially at that point allowing a higher demand use into the building that is probably essentially gonna, steal parking from all of the other areas of the building businesses. So that's where we would want to see if they could get like some kind of a cross parking agreement or something with, a place, or just so that if the use was going to change, that we've got a plan for how it's not negatively going to impact the neighborhood.
Where would you get parking? Storage isn't gonna allow it, and we wouldn't want a
It's
storage
really
facility either,
tough.
and then you got
It's
the gas
super
station
challenging.
across the
Gas
street.
stations, banks,
No,
they,
yeah, they
they're
could-
expanding, so they're maxed out at their parking. I mean, some of the banks down the street may, but then you're forcing more pedestrian
Pedestrian.
walking. The lot across the street where the brick house was torn down can't be used as a primary parking lot. The owner of those properties wanted to buy that and make it a parking lot, and I said, well, talk to planning, but that's not gonna be permitted.
It doesn't sound like this is gonna work.
It's just a very difficult application to work through just because of the location and
And their peak hours are daytime?
yeah, it was gonna be daytime.
Okay.
I think it was like 7 to 3 for the juice bar.
Right.
The event center was like something like 4 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Yeah.
something like that. They changed their hours on the juice bar application, but that's why Elena think we got to make sure that the applications are consistent and that we really know the hours and what's being approved. E1 just did a submittal for what they call a small lot line adjustment. It's 1.5 acres, but on the hillside there, it's not really a big deal. And then obviously we already talked about the zoning code update. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, David?
I don't think so.
Zoning board has 2 cases. One is the commercial signage request I was talking to you about at 1769 Union Street. The other is we do need to bring GE Vernova back to the zoning board. Just because the building location is different for them to reaffirm whether or not that still qualifies for height variance. Grants update, Lions Park has got Rita working hard on that with Shashank, right? And then I am going to try and submit the critical pedestrian grant today because I am on vacation next week. And the linkage study grant, all the paperwork's in. I've had some pre-meetings with them and some discussions at Complete Streets, so that should be ramping up here in the next month or 2. Complete Streets has been discussing the proposed county treatments on Grand Boulevard. And I'm still just trying to get those drawings from the county so that we can at least see what they're proposing to do
Grand Boulevard.
for Grand Boulevard.
Right, I requested to look at that also.
Oh, you have? Okay. I still haven't gotten anything from them.
Send it along to me.
I'll ask them again. I've asked them, I think at this point, maybe 4 times.
Yeah, and we have to be very careful making any kind of change in this community because people don't like change, especially on Grand Boulevard. It's, been that way since originally. John's laughing at me, but
Less than that,
you gotta
but
be careful.
the portion of Grand Boulevard that we're talking about in the town of Niskuna is from the high school up, right?
It's cool. The Schenectady High School.
Yeah.
I mean, it's close to the Schenectady High School. It's
Like,
an intersection or 2
It's
down.
basically a block or 2.
Yeah. It's like probably 6 or 7 blocks.
Is it really that?
All the way up to the top.
Yeah.
Antwerp Road down to almost the city of Schenectady High School.
Both sides of it.
Yeah.
The real boulevard part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. David lives on that road.
You
So
live on that road.
I live on
How
Okay,
do
very
your
good. So
neighbors feel about it?
Keep in touch.
about what
Yeah, have you spoken to anybody about trying to do a bike lane or a bike path there? Or?
I'd be for something on there. And again, like that's another good candidate for sidewalks, but it's with the County Road, so
Mhm.
that would be a good linkage, especially if you're thinking of looking at Palmer and it's interesting. I actually tell people to park on Grand as opposed to Palmer and the other side
Mhm.
streets. And I live on the corner of Grand and Palmer and Yellow House. So we've got new neighbors that have kind of moved in the last couple of years. And I said, on Grand, it's just wider.
Yeah.
And the traffic has to stop at the top of the boulevard. Now, when you come around and you're going westbound, that's a takeoff.
Yeah.
There's nothing from stopping you because it's an emergency route.
Hitting the gas.
So we're getting all of the police stakeouts that are up on, where Story comes around, a couple of them are down a little further. The big issue there is just vehicular speed. That's really
With
Right.
Crossroads.
in the crossroads.
I
Yeah.
have, cause I mean, as most, everybody knows, I live around the corner basically from David, and I drive at least once a day up one side and down the other side of Grand Boulevard. I was on the phone with Laura the other day. I'm like, I literally had to swerve to avoid a car who was just flying through the median. They didn't stop, they didn't slow down. They
They
just kept
stop,
going.
we got
Right.
stop signs there, we have yield
Yeah,
signs.
stop signs, yield signs.
Well, the cross streets there come in at a weird angle.
They do. As you
And
get
that
further
goes-
down, it
That
makes
goes
it tougher.
back to the
Yeah.
old days when they were horse and buggy right, in that area. But they do come in at a weird angle, so
Yeah.
the sight lines are very difficult. And then you do have people jutting out to get to the median to hopefully stop there.
Yeah.
And, before they continue on, but
Signs.
There are yield signs in
But
the.
I don't know why people think that like you wouldn't at least slow down. And I mean, I could see with some of the angles, maybe it being a little bit more difficult, but I don't remember, did I tell you which one I was at that day? Or I don't remember which one I was at, but to me, they should have seen me. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't, like there was no tree or obstruction at that point in time. So
Well, at the risk of being the most hated person in the town of Muskegon, I actually think that the end treatment for that corridor should be to limit some of those very angular crossings to the median. You
Mhm.
should just extend the median and have people only be able to take a right turn and then a U-turn in specific places where it's safer.
Mhm.
But the county's not proposing to do that right now. Originally, the county was supposed to put a bike lane.
Mhm.
But the only way they could do the bike lane is if they removed the ability of people to have parking on the road.
You can't do that.
People, you can't do that.
I think it would be difficult because I mean, I've expressed this to Bill.
Yeah.
As somebody who lives on Van Antwerp, you can't park on Van Antwerp. It's not possible. And then like the side streets from Van Antwerp to Grand Boulevard are small dead end streets. That the owners of the property usually use for on-street parking. So there's very, very limited. I mean, I've had deliveries where I've had to go all the way down to Van Antwerp Middle School to meet them because there's no parking in between. And I just think that if you eliminate Grand Boulevard parking altogether, we're gonna end up in a situation where there's just not gonna be enough on-street parking for people who need it.
On-street parking does slow down traffic as well. I mean, I know people don't like to have cars parked on your street, but we have these big wide streets, and when you have a car parked on them, they're not as wide, and it does make people slow down.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
mean,
Cars-
yeah,
It is traffic calming to have cars parked on
and
that.
now will a bike lane, yeah,
So the idea of a bike lane, and there's something that's been in the comp plan from the previous version, was these concepts of lineal parks on the boulevards. And that's a pretty generous median. A lot of people walk down the middle.
yeah.
So maybe
But-
there's a thought process of saying, okay, a multi-use path or something that goes down there. Because the original expansion, when they widened that before my time coming here,
Mhm, mhm.
they then planted trees almost like in a, now
Yeah.
some of those trees have aged out and there's gaps. And which is good because you have the ability to start some other plantings or do whatever you want. But, clearly you could get a path down the middle, you get a path on one side justified, is maybe inset from the curb. There's maybe ways to look at that median that
Mhm.
might solve a couple items and not affect parking. Taking parking off of Grand Boulevard is difficult because there's a lot of houses there that have a single loaded
Yep.
driveway.
Mhm.
And they don't have double driveways. And you'd be surprised, but the
Mhm.
ones in the middle, the bigger houses on the ends have the corner driveways with double garages. A bunch of them don't.
Mhm.
And a lot of them don't like it because they have more than 3 cars there. You have to back in the boulevard, you have to go all the way back around. And there is a decent amount of parking that's on the boulevard.
There is.
Plus, when you have a school event at Van Antwerp, I mean, it is all over. They take up every single possible street that they can.
The plan they have now, which you're going to get pictures of, is to stripe a parking lane and then stripe bump outs at the intersections, like striped bump outs, try and more clearly define those intersections. If people slow down, I don't really understand what it looks like, and I still haven't seen the plans, but
So
We gotta see
they
what
have,
they're proposing.
Yeah.
they did something similar, I think, in downtown Schenectady.
like the painted bump out.
Yes.
I mean, painted bump outs are, you know, a kind of nationally recognized treatment. They
They're
can definitely
somewhat-
help. Yeah, I don't,
I don't know if it's gonna solve that.
I know the
problem.
police were concerned with, allowing cars to park too close to the intersections. They have so many accidents out there.
Correct. That's what the state
Yeah.
sort of recommended if they could put some no parking, so the cars aren't close to the intersections, it helps.
Isn't that like state law that you're not supposed to park within?
Within
certain feet of
15
an
feet, I think, but Ian was saying that it needs to be more than lower because of the angle of the intersection. And I don't know if maybe they can accomplish that with striping paint. I don't know what that's gonna look like. Probably the county, it's a county road. I mean, they're doing this with a grant. It's a federal grant to do the repaving and the striping. They have federal money for it
Now,
right now.
some maintenance in on.
No, the striping. I mean, they're not talking about putting cans of green paint down. They just don't do that anymore, even though I like it. I think they're just talking about like white stripes.
Let's keep an eye on it for sure.
Yeah.
We got vested interest.
Yeah, so Complete Streets is also working on the transportation chapter of the comprehensive plan. They just sent another round out. I've got it in my email that I gotta look at. And then I was really sick for this too, which I feel bad about, but the bike rodeo on June 15th was very successful.
That bike palooza, yes.
Bike-a-palooza.
Great job.
So, I mean, and that was mostly Tess Healy and Trisha Bergami.
I wanted to compliment Trish.
Yeah, she
Absolutely.
and Tess got everybody there and Trish did all the logistics, but my understanding was there are 200 to 300 people there.
And it was a hot day too.
No, the weather was
Oh,
perfect.
did it break
was-
out?
It was the day before all the hot weather started. So there was a ton of people, planning for places, gave the helmets away. When you do that meeting, if you can call those guys out. Stewart's did ice cream, Uncle Rico's did pizza. There was music from the high school. Everybody came.
Tell me about the helmets. How many did you have?
I think Planning for Places donated them themselves. I don't know what his number was they handed up, but I think it was 40 or 50 helmets.
I jog around, I drive around, I see these kids, they're not wearing helmets.
So
People don't wear. I see
I'll
these
tell you,
kids
helmet
not
saved my
wearing
kid's
helmets.
life. He didn't want to wear it, but it saved his life. His front tire popped off, and if he didn't have a helmet on, I can't imagine what would happen to his head.
Their village, 3 kids, one of them had a bike helmet
He
on.
came home and his helmet was cracked up good. I'm like, Alex, what happened?
So they mostly had children's helmets. I think they gave away. I think I could ask Jim, but I think it was between 40 and 50 helmets. They gave them all away. And we have heard that Martin Harding and Mazzati will give us helmets too.
Well, if you get some, let me know.
Yeah.
Like,
About to get,
how many?
yeah,
Well, I think
What's the age? Is it 14? You got it below 14?
I know what the rules are for that.
There's some age where, okay,
there's a little rebellion going on, so I think kids are leaving the house with the helmets on, and then the helmets somehow get taken off during their leisure ride. I might have done something similar with a kid.
Well, Jim was saying, and I think it's true, is that the adults have to wear the helmet. I think that, if you're not wearing a helmet, but you tell your kid to wear a helmet, they're like, what the heck? Jim had a decent amount of adult helmets, like every single person and whoever's out there riding, you have a helmet, and you have to show that you do it from, from 2 years older, whenever you want to put your kid on the bike, all the way till you can't bike anymore. So, but it was great, and I was really happy for that.
If I can interrupt for a minute, I have to go to court, so Mr. McPartlin, if you wouldn't mind continuing to chair. And thank you all. All right.
Thanks, John.
Yes, and the next meeting we'll find out shortly, I hope, town board meeting.
I'll send something out later.
Very good. Thank you again, and thank you, Ms. Beamer.
Thanks, John. So, the tree council was working with the highway department on a pilot planting program on Regent Street. I thought it went well. Ray and Pete said it was the timing wasn't great. It'd be better if we did it earlier in the spring, but seems to think it was okay. So I think we're gonna try and do more of it in the fall. But essentially the tree council went out and figured out and talked to the people and figured out where all the trees were gonna go, put the stakes in the ground and then turned it over to the highway department to plant. There was one house that we couldn't get it in, which if anybody's interested, it's very fascinating picture. The highway department started to dig down. There was roots from the old stump, cut a layer of roots out, and there was another layer of roots from the old stump. So they're like 1.5 feet down in the ground, and it's just a chunk of wood, and they couldn't get it out.
Sometimes you can't plant it where you think you're
No.
gonna plant it.
And they really, really tried. So, and the sad part about it is it's very sunny there, but it's just so hard to dig a hole. The old tree that was there was so big, and I think the roots were jammed between the sidewalk and the road. And so it didn't have very much places to put its roots, and it just put layers and layers of like crazy roots there. And they couldn't
I've
get.
got that on my own yard.
Do you?
My
But
own
they
yard
got-
took down some big trees that died, and then you wanna plant something there,
Yeah.
you can't do it.
But they got 6 of the 7 trees in, and they're gonna use the extra tree over at the new splash pad on Railroad Park. So I'm very thankful to them. They are always great to work with, and I think it's really good to get those trees out there. And then the tree council is still working on training this summer for residents about tree care. The CAC Dart couldn't make it today. He sends his apologies. They had a natural resource inventory walk in May, and the next one's scheduled for August. I have been working really hard with our consultant on our greenhouse gas inventory. Beth, your staff has been helping me. They're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, Margie's been sending me a bunch of kilowatt hour spreadsheets so that we can see how much energy we use, and working on a fleet spreadsheet. And Keith helped the consultant. He was great. He sent the consultant everything he needed about the nitrogen at the wastewater treatment plant. Charlie has also been helping me on the refrigerants for the HVAC. It's a lot. Been working, but we're hoping to have it done within a week or two. So, again, the EV festival is July 20th. We're hoping that with that campaign launched, we may be able to get another $5,000 to the town for more stuff.
Just so you know, with that, we had a change, with the parking lot being
Yeah.
blocked off so that farmer's market isn't gonna exit out through the parking through the,
They're
We're-
not.
so the way the entrance and exit, just so everybody knows, because we're gonna have to just be a little thoughtful about it. I worked with Jordan, and farmer's market is gonna both enter and then exit right in front of town hall, so he's gonna be providing a police
Oh, it'll
person.
be like 2-way.
Yes, but we're gonna like put, actually the things used in Bike-a-Palooza to like make 2 lanes to make it very visible, and they're gonna have a police officer there because technically that is a one-way road, so we really shouldn't be doing that, so we needed a lot of help, but they were amazing, and we worked through all that so that people won't be exiting out the back, but they'll be coming in and out all at the front. So just so that as you guys are starting to plan, like how you get people in and where you put the cars and stuff, I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that.
Yeah, that's good to know. We were just gonna put, I think we limited it to 20 EV vehicles all along with solar panels.
Perfect.
So that shouldn't interfere at all.
It
with
shouldn't,
that.
Should
no.
change your direction.
should
We're
be
gonna
fine.
try this for the farmers.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress.
Yes,
See it.
Yeah.
it's wide enough to be a 2-way road.
I spoke to the chief. Yeah, change, Laura.
I know.
Well, and that was we looked at a lot of different options and I think we figured that's the safest to keep the separation between people and the vehicles, but it's gonna be a little tricky. So we're gonna slow down and give it a go and see how it works.
Yeah, we're gonna tuck them all the way up in the back by the solar
Yeah,
panel.
I think
So
that's a good choice.
that way anybody who just wants to go to the farmer's market can park near, and then if they're like, oh, look at all these cool cars,
Yeah,
then they can go over and chat with the EV vehicle owners.
it's awesome.
And CC still working on our site plan checklist that we talked about the last time. Architectural Review Board clerk is out today, but I know they have been having some successful meetings.
Laura,
Excuse
excuse me,
Rita?
Laura.
Yeah.
Wow, I have actually an important question, but the Architecture Review Board and Clark, I mean, they have been providing guidance through this grant process, right? Because we plateaued as far as the drawings, the architectural drawings, and what we actually need are structural engineers to come in and do assessment on the building. And
Lions
Stacy from the excuse me?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, Stacy, the structural engineer from the ARB, she's been down there at the building with us. She did a preliminary assessment of the roof, and from what we see from the drawings, the times that they did do restoration of that building, it was more vanity than actually structure. So the roof issues were just supplemented, like the sisters were, I mean, the boys were sister to each other to support, but the from the photos from 79 to 77, I'm 77, 79 and up to now, they still show that crack, but now it's to the point where these need to be addressed. And what we're trying to do is to now, what the suggestion was from the structural engineer, that we get a grant to have these assessments done and also the underpinnings of the station, on which we're waiting on Ray Smith to have his to clear the back end to get into the basement. So their ARB has stepped in to really provide guidance and assistance, in getting at least a budget started for this grant.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Rita. That's right.
Yeah.
I think Clark did tell me that they're working really hard on the Lions Park grant. Comprehensive Plan Committee finished the survey, over 500 responses, did their final public outreach, kind of neighborhood-based public outreach at the Glen Eddy. So now Ashok has been working on synthesizing some of that public outreach data, and still trying to decide how we want to do a second RFP. I think we talked about maybe having it be more of a finalizing of the comprehensive plan than because we've so far along it now. The building department working on the high grass complaints and the vacant home notices. Vacant home notices, it's a new program that we tried, been very successful, and it's been helpful. A couple times we've had registered vacant homes that had an issue, and we were just able to go into our files and pull out the registry and find a good contact information to get some of the complaints addressed more rapidly than we had in the past. And it's still a new process, but I think it's working. I wouldn't recommend changing it at this point. I think it's working. Sometimes people get the vacant notice and they don't know why, because sometimes it becomes not vacant and we don't realize. And that's caused a couple of people to get a little mad, but as soon as they talk to us and we figure out what's happening, I think it's been fun. So, planning for engineering, still working on the drainage analysis in coordination with water sewer engineering and highway. We've been to a couple joint meetings on that. I think it's been going really well. Clerk is kind of doing a best, middle, low approach to how we handle the townwide drainage study. One of the questions we did have when you have a chance, though, Beth, was what the budget was. Matt thought it was somewhere in the $30,000 range, but I think Jamie thought it was higher than that.
I'm pretty sure it's higher than that.
Yeah, that's what Jamie thought.
I think the 30 was when we initially looked at it a few years ago for a smaller scale study.
Because one of the things Clark has found is that we can potentially model the entire town. And then once that model's built, when development comes, you can add to the model and it can be very flexible. When you want to change a culvert, you can change the culvert in the model and it'll show you the entire downstream effect, which is really cool. But that's the high end.
Best that it can.
That's the best that it can be.
Best that it can.
And I think they would hold the model though, so every time you would make a change, you'd have to pay them to make the change.
Sure about that, because I missed that meeting.
You're not gonna own the software to reading all the calculations.
They build that model, you have them on retainer to help you figure out what's happening in the town and what changes you can make and stuff like that.
And if you leverage that to help the initial cost be less.
Yeah.
Knowing that you're tied to them.
Yeah, if you have to buy one of those seats for a license, basically, it's an annual renewal. So it's thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Plus you have to have training to use it.
We
You have to be continually using it.
But it would be cool. They have the old 1991 study that they're building off of, and we've got a couple different approaches. But if we could know the budget, that might be helpful to us. And then I know the Console Road sidewalk is the concept design is moving forward. Still working on 1A Road easement and easement on 31 East Street. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Alina? Did you have anything else you want to add, Rita? I think you're muted.
No, as far as the grant and the budget, I've been approached by citizens who would like to organize a group to raise funds, like a fundraiser. And I noticed that Phil Steck, if you read the email from Niski Dems, they also, the historical theaters, they're also did the same thing to raise money. And the only thing that gave me hesitation was I need to speak to Elena at some point because I need to find out what the legalities are. Excuse me?
We have a hard time hearing you, Rita.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Elena said just reach out to her and she'll talk to you about your fundraising questions.
All right, thank you. Because I mean, these are private citizens. I don't know how it meshes with the budget and make sure that the money is coming straight to the town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Because
Elena can talk to you about that.
All right. Okay, thank you so much.
I know you're working really hard on that, and I really appreciate it, Rita. I think in a couple years, the train station is going to be amazing, and it's going to be you and the Architectural Review Board and Dennis and all the people that have worked hard on it. So, okay, and then like Elena said, maybe we could put together an email on that vacancy list and see if we can, especially for planning board, fill some of those holes. That's all I have.
That's all you have?
Do you have anything, Matt? Yes?
All right. Looks like the next meeting is TBD. What's the story with your next meeting?
Oh, whoops.
Would be August 2nd. So
Yeah, I think it is supposed to be August 2nd.
August 2nd. At 8:30.
Yeah.
I'll take a motion to adjourn. Second the motion. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Bill, all I wanted to do is call you Bill Chapman. And I was like, if I say it out loud, it's gonna be even worse. It's really stuck in my head. I'm really sorry about that.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, Rita.
Bye-bye.
I'm paying attention to continue approve the minutes.
No, rolling on.
Trish finished them. I just didn't finish. I didn't get a chance.